Moshe Taragin here from the Gush from Alon Shvot. This is a Dvar Torah for Parshas Chayei Sarah, sponsored by Mizrahi Olamei. Thank you for giving me the privilege and the honor to be part of this illustrious program with such prestigious Rabbanim and personalities delivering Torah across the world on a weekly basis. Avraham's career in Parshas Lech Lecha and Vayera is framed around two divine promises. There are promises that intersect, but they're distinct. One promise is about children. V'samti zaracha ka chochvei hashamayim, like the supernal stars hovering above this earth, not prone or subject to the laws that govern humanity. We are supernatural and metaphysical. Ke afar haaretz, we are the source of life, even though sometimes we're trodden upon like the dust. Or kechol asher al safas hayam, we are the sand and we protect humanity the same way the sand protects dry land from encroachment. The second promise is not about children, but about this land, living in this land. L'zaracha tein es haaretz azos, ki es kol haaretz asher atara lecha tenanu u'l'zaracha olam, yama v'tzafona v'kedma v'yama. These are the two promises. Of course, they intersect because the land is given to Avram and his descendants to us. In Lech Lecha and Vayera, the arc and the trajectory of these two divine promises is, each of these arcs are very dramatic and very radical and very obvious and very tense, and there are wars that are fought in the land that Avram's been promised, so he has to process and participate in that war because this is his land. There's moral deterioration in the land of Sodom and Amorah, which is in Eretz Yisrael, and he witnesses firsthand, despite his heroic efforts to save them from their own dark demons. Despite his efforts, the land of Israel will not tolerate moral misbehavior, and he learns that lesson. There are famines that challenge his faith about this land that he's been promised. There are rivalries amongst his children, Yitzchak and Yishmael, which will be his chosen seed. Ki bi Yitzchak yikara l'chazara. It takes him a while to have the children that Hashem has promised him. He asks Hashem, Bama edaki rashana. Then, of course, Yitzchak is almost sacrificed. And there are angels and apparitions and visitations and revelations and Gilui Shechina and Vayera Lav Hashem, Vayera Hashem B'chalom Laila Tardiman Nafla Avraham. Very colorful, very obvious that these are divine promises, and implementing these divine promises in the real world creates a lot of havoc and a lot of movement and a lot of motion. In Chayei Sarah, everything dies down. Things are very quiet. Hashem no longer speaks to Avram. The last communication is at Har HaMoriah, the Akedah. And each of these promises have to be implemented in practical terms. He has to purchase his first land in Israel, because until Parshas Chayei Sarah, he doesn't own any land. And he has to make sure that he has Zaracha Atain, because Yitzchak is a bachelor. And he goes about his business in very pedestrian, humdrum, normal, as we would say, not supernatural fashion. But each of these processes, A, to acquire land in Israel, B, to secure a wife for Yitzchak, are very arduous. They require travel. Certainly in the case of finding a kala for Yitzchak, Avram can't make the trip, so he has to rely upon his trusty servant, which is not easy. His negotiations with Ephron and with Bnei Chais are not smooth. Many rounds, many ins and outs and ups and downs, and even the uncertainty of who will deliver water to Eved Avram at the well. And the storyline of Parshas Chayei Sarah is, it's very easy to preserve your vision when you're undergoing apocalyptic events and dramatic events and wars and angels and akedas and visitations and revelations and divine communications and dialogues. But sometimes we have to preserve vision when the enemy of vision is not other visions or other challenges, but tedium and routine and practicality and pragmatism and negotiations and finance and Ephrons of the world and the uncertainty of whether Besuel and Lavan will release Rivka. So it's easy to have vision when everything's dramatic. It's easy to have vision when you're fighting wars. It's easy to have vision when you're encountering angels. He's in a vision when you're traveling halfway across the ancient Middle Eastern terrain to go from Haran to Israel. It's harder to have vision when you feel bogged down by the tedium. The last year, it's been sad and tragic. and we're still recovering, and it'll take decades to recover from the trauma. But it has been very clear that this is a moment in history, and that this is a historical shift in a war that will have messianic and redemptive ramifications. And the war now is getting a little more tedious and day-to-day and dragged out, and now we're entering the stage, hopefully, of negotiations. And it's a little harder to have that vision of where we are. And politics are entering. There's a lot of internal squabbling within Israel, and ministers are being replaced. And the year of dramatic spirit and vision is evidently yielding to a period of a more complicated and a serpentine, less direct. And it's a challenge to maintain that vision that we're still struggling with history, and we're still crafting the next chapters of history. And as the war, of course, continues, we're still fighting the war. But even when there's a tedium and there's a pragmatism that sets in, preserve your vision, as Avraham did in Parshas Chayei Sarah, because that's the challenge of the anticlimax, or the afterclimax, when things die down in terms of their level of drama. Can you still see through the thicket of red tape and the thicket of day-to-day politics and the thicket of negotiations, and be able to see the longer-term process that you're still engaged in? Shabbat Shalom. May Hashem give us strength. May Hashem give us courage. May Hashem give us vision. Shabbat Shalom.